and I will start talking. And we're live. Okay. Hello, book lovers. Welcome to Authors Love Bookstores, presented by A Mighty Blaze. My name is Kimberly Hensle-Lowrance, and I'm your host today. A Mighty Blaze is a volunteer effort of writers and creatives who love books, storytelling, authors, and bookstores. We work to bring attention to these essential parts of our culture during COVID-19 and beyond. Authors Love Bookstores is a weekly online program which I host and produce in conjunction with fellow writer Joe Moldover. Our goal is to highlight independent bookstores across the United States and Canada to tell you what makes them so special and what you can do to support them. We do this by speaking with booksellers and with authors who love and appreciate their stores. If you're watching us live on Facebook, please feel free to post a question below the broadcast and we'll get to them, or we'll try to get to them later on in the discussion. This interview will later be posted to YouTube, so please subscribe to A Mighty Blaze's YouTube channel to catch all of our interviews as they're ready. Now, today, I'm so excited to welcome author Sonali Dev to Authors Love Bookstores. Welcome, Sonali. I read Sonali's most recent book, Recipe for Persuasion, this summer. Here it is. And I got to the last page and I said, I want to have her on Authors Love Bookstores. This was a fun read and I so enjoyed it. And I felt like it was such an important thing, such a good thing to read in 2020 when so much is wrong with the world. We needed a bright spot. So I'm so happy that Sonali is here. Sonali is the best-selling author of a number of novels. She writes Bollywood-style love stories that let her explore issues faced by women around the world while still indulging in her faith in a happily ever after. Her novels have been on a number of Best Books of the Year lists from Library Journal, NPR, Washington Post, Kirkus. She's won a number of awards, including the American Library Association's Award for Best Romance, the RT Reviewer Choice Award for Best Contemporary Romance, multiple RT Seals of Excellence, and she's a Rita finalist and has been listed for the Dublin Literary Award. Self-awareness calls her, quote, not only one of the best, but one of the bravest romance novelists working today, end quote. She lives in Chicago, and she is with us today to make sure all of you fall in love with one of her favorite bookstores, Anderson's Bookshop. Welcome, Sonali.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. It is so wonderful to be here. And thanks for doing this because, independent bookstores, it's such a worthy thing that you're doing. And Anderson's, I was so excited when Ginny said she would join us because we'll come back and talk about it. But Anderson's is a mile from my house and it helped me raise my children.
That's
and it's one of my favorite places on earth. So thanks, Jenny, for being here.
And that's a perfect segue introducing our other guest, Ginny Whirler-Hameter. Ginny is part of the team at Anderson's Bookshop, which is, again, our featured bookstore today. Welcome, Ginny.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it. And thank you, Sonali, for reaching out. As always, our friend Sonali, anything for her.
Excellent. So, Ginny, our viewers come from all over North America, and so maybe they know Chicago, maybe they don't. Can you tell us a little bit about where you're located? Because you have a couple of different stores, it's not just one, right? So tell us a little bit about Anderson's Bookshop, where you're located, and about your customer base too.
Sure, yeah. So we're in the Chicago area, or actually I'm sitting in our store in Naperville, Illinois, which is a little ways west of Chicago, one of the largest suburbs. And then we have a second location in Downers Grove, which is just a little bit to the east of here. We also have our toy shop here in Naperville, which is 2 doors down from our bookstore. It's called Anderson's Toy Shop. And we also run our warehouse out of Aurora, which is where we handle all of our school book fairs and school orders and our conferences as well. So we're all out in the western suburbs.
Okay, terrific.
Yeah, so our customer base, we've had, like Sonali said, we've had families come through. I'm a former Anderson's customer as a child that I now get to work here, which is really cool. And we have, there's a lot of families. Naperville is a very family-oriented community, especially. So we've got, and the schools are very much integrated into the day-to-day community. So we work a lot with schools. We've got a lot of kids coming in normal times after school to shop and find something. But we're also very fortunate. We host in normal times, again, over 400 in-person events a year usually. So we are we have a lot of folks coming in for all different topics and from all different backgrounds for those as well.
When I was preparing for the interview, I read the history of the bookstore, and Anderson's Bookshop dates back to 1875, right? It was just like, it was a
Yes.
pharmacy that's a family business that kind of evolved over time. You're definitely the oldest bookstore we've featured on Authors Love Bookstore. Can you tell us a little bit about that? That's amazing, because you don't hear about indie bookstores like that.
Right. It's really, really cool to be part of the history. So in 1875, Wickle, the great-great-grandfather, I think it is, of the current owners, there might be one more great in there, I have to get my generations right, opened the pharmacy, but they here in town, as the town was really starting to take off, and he always had books. In fact, there was a little section upstairs in the bookshop that they called, it was, oh my gosh, it was Paperback Paradise. Sorry, I'm completely spacing there. It was called Paperback Paradise, which is very fun related to today's conversation, because people either thought that it was a religious bookstore or it was all romance. In fact, it was just a general, selection of books, and that was always a part of the pharmacy. And then it wasn't until 1964 when the current owner's parents, Bob and Jean Anderson, separated the bookstore out into a separate location where we are now in downtown Naperville. So we've been in that location since 64, but we're going on 6 generations of the Anderson family actually owning and running the store, which is very, very cool. It's such an amazing legacy to be a part of, and I'm really grateful to be part of this team.
That's really stunning. You just don't hear about that.
Yeah.
What a gift to the community.
Well, and the pharmacy is actually still running too. It's now called Oswald's Pharmacy, and it is separate from the bookstore in a different location, but there's still the shared family history, which is really cool.
Wonderful. Now, is the store open now?
We are open. We've been open since right after Memorial Day, when we shifted into the next phase. We were closed for those couple of months, and we're delightedly overwhelmed with internet orders, which was wonderful. And we are open to browsing. We're all keeping an eye on how many people are allowed in the store, obviously, and everyone needs to wear a mask and sanitize and things like that. But it's nice to be able to walk into a bookstore and have that sort of almost feel a little bit normal, right? With books around you and new things coming up. But of course, we're not able to do in-person events, which has been so sad. But we are doing virtual events, which I know we'll talk about in a little bit. But
okay, wonderful. Now, Sonali, this is your bookstore, as you said in the beginning. This is where you brought your children. What is it about Anderson's that's so special? What makes this long running? There's got to be some special sauce here. If this bookstore has survived for so long through so many changes and upheavals, what makes it so unique?
It's magic. And one of the things that that Ginny didn't mention is, and this is such a bragging point for an author and for a baby author, is that if you can name any working author alive today, I think there's a 90% chance that they've done an event at Anderson's, if not 100% chance. Like I almost challenge you to throw out the name of an author, and that author will have done an event at Anderson's. So they have this wall, and anybody who's done an event there gets to sign on it, and just like the magic and the joy for a debut author, to just go there and sign there, with J.K. Rowling and R.L. Stein, you name it, and to go and be able to sign. I couldn't even, I don't have the words for that. It's just, it's amazing. And for me, when it, of course, and it's kind of kitty corner to our library. So, and it's a few streets down from my children's middle school. And our local hands-on museum, children's museum, where my children worked when they were in middle school, and volunteered, and so our whole life kind of happened or plays out. Now my kids are off in college, but especially back then, our life kind of played out, at Anderson's and at the ice cream shop across it, and all of that. So I think I passed it every day, and I did a lot of my writing at the Naperville Library, which is kitty corner. So I passed this bookstore every day. And can you imagine as a dreaming author, as an aspiring author? And I will tell you this, when you're an aspiring author, it's just a dream, right? And it is one of those dreams that there's a very large chance that it's not going to come true. right? And so every author's dream is, I mean, it has to be fueled by so much, because it doesn't happen for a lot of people. And so here I am, an aspiring author, trying to write in a space where there really aren't books like mine and all of that. So it was quite a far-fetched dream. And I'm passing this bookstore every day. And every day I see in the window a poster for some great, right, that is going to be there, right? Adriana Trigiani, you name it, right? You have these people that you read, these people who have had decades long careers, millions of books sold, like these giants, right, who are going to walk into that store. And every time, and it was my live vision board. So every time I passed it, this was almost creepy, but I would actually touch the windows. Like I would touch the window every time I'm passing and like do my little mumbo jumbo, like soak up vision board thing every time I passed it. So it was the most insane thing. And if I said to people, and I said to my kids, someday mom's going to sign there. And they were really sweet. They're little and they thought it was real, right? I mean, these are elementary school and yeah, mommy, you are. And and everybody else kind of rolled their eyes and said, yeah, sure. But it was it's so tied up with my personal history as an author. And then of course, my first book, Bollywood Affair, came out 2014, and they did my book launch. They've done all my book launches except for this last one when they were closed, which was planned, but we had to cancel. But that first book launch was, I mean, talk about dreams come true, right? I had family flying from all over the country. We had
huge
some
event,
150 people.
Yeah.
All of it was my family. I think it was one person there that I didn't know. We'll talk about that story another time. But it was, and we had, I mean, I think we had Indian food. We had like somebody selling jewelry.
It was a party.
It was a crazy thing. And it was, it was literally like somebody was saying, it felt like a little Indian wedding in there. And it was just amazing. And so talk about dreams come true. It's like such a special place. And even before I was published, Erin Keebles, who is one of the booksellers there, I mean, she was just such a personal, encouraging force. They're just such a pillar of the community, and just love, love reading and love books. And for Erin, and I think even Jenny, love the romance genre, and just, I mean, I credit them with so much.
Oh, you're very kind, Sonali. That's so sweet.
I love this vision of you. Like walking past, putting your hands on the window, like promising the bookshop one day.
Yes.
One day. And then it happens.
Yes.
There is magic. That's just
there's wonderful. So much kismet in this industry though, and in this world of books, because I was a kid coming here. My parents and my grandparents knew the Anderson family, and I would come here as a kid all the time. And the very first signing that I remember coming to, I had to have been in like middle school, and I came and met. We were just walking in because we were going to go on vacation. I needed some books for my vacation, and there was this guy sitting here signing books, and I thought, well, all right, that looks like a nice, good, big thick book for a vacation read. I was like 10, and it was like a 700-page mass market. I was like, sure, I can do that in a day. And so I got it signed, and I loved it. It was Terry Brooks. The books were the Sword of Shannara series, which is a fantastic fantasy series. And that was, that had to have been like 1990, 1991, very, very early on. And when I started at Anderson's in 2012, Terry was one of the very first events that I got to work, which was such this full circle moment. I used to write shelf talkers for Anderson as a kid, and so it was really neat to come back full circle on that. But there's that magic in anybody you talk to in the book selling world has that story, and the authors too. It's really something else.
And it feels meant to be.
Right.
Yeah. Well, feels like a plot of a romance novel. Something that kind of falls into place just perfectly. So, since we're on the topic of romance novels, Sonali, tell our viewers about your latest book, Recipe for Persuasion. You have a copy. You're going to hold it up. This book is so fun. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I don't usually read romance novels, and I didn't know it was a romance novel when I got it out. And I think I didn't realize it was a romance novel until I was done with it either, because I think we've had romance novelists and romance bookstores on the show before, and we had this whole conversation, and the sort of stereotype of swashbuckling heroes is like one part of romance, but the field is very wide. And there's so many different stories that can be told. And contemporary romances, like the ones you write, at the core of them, they're just like wonderful stories.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is. And I mean, romance, the only two things that romance novels are supposed to have, the two rules, are that you can't pull the love story out and still tell that story. So the central, the spine of the story has to be the love story.
Mm-hmm.
And it shouldn't end with death and destruction. It should have an upbeat, happy ending. And those are two things that no matter what I've read, and I grew up not having access. I grew up in India, and which is not to say that, I mean, there was a lot of you could buy romance in every little shanty bookstore, shanty little shop, in even the little bazaars. But we didn't have, like, growing up, I didn't have that much access to romance. But in everything I read, I always zeroed in on the love story. That was what was important to me. And of course, I wasn't a fan of books that ended with death and destruction, as I call it, because I mean, I have this thing where people will say that somehow a book that ends happily is unrealistic, and yet none of us wakes up in the morning and thinks, how can I be unhappy today? So the only realistic thing in life is hope, and the only realistic thing in life is to wake up every day and want a happy ending, right? I mean, that's as real as it gets. So so to me, that was my natural, like, I was always going to write love stories with happy endings, which is romance. I don't think that takes it away from also being general fiction, because it's a form of general fiction, right? And so to call it women's fiction or any other kind of fiction, it's very much stories about people that are commercial, in a sense that they're fast paced and fun, and take you on this ride, right? Which seems to be so I mean, in that sense, it's a romance for sure. And of course, the love story is is my favorite part of it. But I think this particular one is as much a love story between a mother and a daughter as it is a love story between the hero and the heroine. So to come back to telling you a little about it, as the big surprise here that nobody can guess is that it's a retelling of a certain Jane Austen novel, Persuasion. And when I say retelling, so it's part of this it's Pride, Prejudice, and Other Flavors. It's part of this, again, another dream that I had when I first started writing, was to be able to write stories that paid homage to one of my favorite authors, who was Jane Austen. And I had this wild idea where I wanted to take my 4 favorite novels by her and put them under one story umbrella, right? Put them under one story universe. And another one of those dreams where, oh, wouldn't that be so great to do? And so again, the fact that this is happening is so great. So this is also the universe it's set in is this politically ambitious Indian American family in the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area. So it's kind of the Indian Kennedys. They're descended from royalty, because I kind of am fascinated by immigration and privilege, and and how those things play together. I'm also fascinated by why all the stories that are told about brown people and about immigrant brown people are always poverty porn. And when these are very joyous communities, of course there is poverty, and of course there's all of that, but the side of it that we don't see is the side that I'm interested in telling my stories in. So Recipe for Persuasion is the story of one of the cousins, and she's a chef, and she's for the past 10 years been trying to save her father's failing restaurant. And as a last ditch effort, she goes on a Food Network show called Cooking with the Stars. And of course, she gets stuck, which is like Dancing with the Stars, but with chefs and celebrities. And the celebrity she gets stuck with is a World Cup winning soccer player who happens to be the man that she dumped under familial pressure 10 years ago, because it's a homage to Persuasion. And while all of that is happening, her estranged mother is back on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to do this two generational thing with this story, because there's also this arranged marriage trope in Bollywood and in traditional Indian stories, and I think in a lot of Western fiction also, where if women are forced into marriage, where you didn't have a choice and you end up in a marriage, the story always tells you that if you take those lemons and you make lemonade with it, you put your head down, you comply, and you make the best of it, you're going to find happiness. And growing up, I always watched those movies and heard those stories, and thought it was such a bunch of hooey. Like, what a horrible thing to tell women, that when you comply, happiness will come to you. When you sacrifice your own desires, happiness will come to you. That people around you know better what's best for you. And if you comply with what's forced upon you, you will find happiness. And all of that just used to make me, I just knew really, really young that there was something wrong with that story. And I always wanted to flip that, because again, the other side of it is that you were always told, if you go for your desires, if you don't sacrifice for your family, death and destruction will happen, awful things will happen. It's true, right? Because we're set up in this world. That's how society is set up. And so, so what I wanted to do was, I wanted to write a woman who says no, I will not go with the choice you made for me. This is my choice. I will go with that. And she's told she will destroy her children and her family. And that does happen. And our heroine in this book is the collateral damage. But I wanted them to go through that fire, walk through it, and come out on the other side, right? Because yes, this world is set up this way and that happens, but there is happiness if we walk through it and come out to the other side. And that's kind of what I wanted to do with this. So it is very much Ashna and her mother's story, and how they reconcile what they've lost because of each other's desires. So.
And I think that is one of the reasons why when I read the book, it didn't immediately come to the forefront of my mind as a romance novel, because there is this very important storyline between the mother and the daughter. But then I guess I thought after, well, there's all different kinds of love, isn't there? There's a love between two people. There's a love between a parent and their child. But there's many, many layers to your book, which I think is one of the things that's exciting about the genre, is that
exactly
it manifests in so many ways.
Exactly. And romance novels, I think, across the board are about love, right? Because you cannot talk about man-woman love until you've talked about each character, first and foremost, learning to love themselves. I think that's what romance novels really are, is the journey to love yourself, so you're the person who can let love into their lives. Because I believe this in real life, that if you cannot be if you don't love yourself, and very often, when we're young and single and, in search, a lot of times, people are like, why is this happening to me? Like, why am I not finding something? Like, why am I only kissing frogs, right? Where's my prince? And you hear this all the time. I have young adult children. So, you see this. And I think the true journey is getting to a point where you are whole enough that the courage to let love into your life, that's a personal journey. And you have to get, that's what I think romance novels do, and that's what they trace. And a lot of people who write them off based on something they read in the 60s, which was relevant then, is not relevant anymore. Today's romance novels are very much journeys of self-exploration, and really in every way, agency, emotional strength, sexuality, which is so tied in with emotional well-being. And so they really are character explorations. And then someone fitting into that is almost a second step.
Fabulous. Thank you for explaining that. I mean, I don't know that we always think about the books, why we like the books that we like, right? But I'm sure, Ginny, I'm sure you've thought a lot about why certain books are very popular in the store or why people gravitate toward them.
Right. And I was going to say, adding on to what Sonali said, one of the main benefits of reading is creating empathy, right? Whether that be through fiction, through romance, through nonfiction, through history, through a memoir, an autobiography, biography, whatever it may be, at any age, at any reading level, and any topic. So I love what you said, Sonali, about romance being about finding creating your own journey to self-acceptance and love, because I think people enjoy reading about that happening for other people, and then that adds to their own journey, whether it's exactly relevant or not. You may have someone reading about reading your most recent book who maybe has a different relationship with their mother, or is already in some sort of partnership, marriage, whatever that may be, and it may not be exactly similar to their life path, but you're going to recognize the journey that good authors like Sonali create through their characters, and you're going to take something away from that. I think the books that resonate, they almost speak to you, right? It's like you walk into a bookstore and you see that one on the shelf, and if the cover is right, or you've got a great bookseller who can say, I think you're going to want this. And that moment of taking the book in your hand, and then especially for kids too, but like you sort of hug it, right? And like you just know that that's going to be time well spent. I mean, it takes a long time to read a book. It's not a half an hour Netflix show, right? But it is time well spent. And then it will mean something to you afterwards.
Yeah, and you're traveling. It's the best way to travel in someone's to walk in someone's shoes. And I love what you said about, so coming back to, and again, I'm going going off in a tangent, but I get asked a lot, why Austen, right? Given that it is as cliched a thing as you can do in today's world, everybody is doing a retelling of Pride and Prejudice, especially. But to me, it's not so much a scene by scene or a plot retelling. To me, it really was paying homage to what I learned from her as a young person. And so exactly what you were saying, for someone who was growing up in India in a certain kind of culture, which was very unforgiving of mistakes and being different. So when we grew up, there was almost this thing where you had one chance to get it right? So you had to get into the right college, because if you didn't at that time and at that age, you never had a second chance. If you messed up and got involved with the wrong kind of guy, nobody would marry you. Your life, would take a whole different path. So there was this very you had to get things right. And then a book like Persuasion, when I read it, I think I was in middle school or early high school. And no, I think I was in 7th grade when I read Pride and Prejudice, and then the rest of her books. And to read a book in which people made a mistake when they were young, and then to have a chance again, it was just such a freeing thing for me. And so really, to me, it was paying homage to that concept that there is always another chance. And those are the things, and those aren't just things I read, but those were things that made me who I am. The same is true of Pride and Prejudice. How love should be, right? How someone should treat you. Lizzie Bennet is has her two choices in life are destitution, and I think by some accounts the 8th richest man in England, probably the 8th richest man in the world. So her choice is between destitution and a man she sees as a jerk. And but he is the answer. He could be the answer to her family's and her financial woes, right? I mean, we're really talking about destitution and life. And she says, no, thank you. You're a jerk and I deserve better than you. So that sense of worth, that I did not see in any literature around me at that time for women. I have no idea where Jane Austen even, but it's entirely pioneering the idea that she had, which was that I am worthy. And I think that those things have taught me who to be, at a very deep level. It's not just writing, it's not my writing, but it's in how I have ended up living my life. And so, I mean, books and the way they impact you isn't like a 8-hour, going away, right? It actually changes, especially when you read young. But I think even when you read older, it can, like you said, Ginny, I mean, you can be, I get emails on a daily basis about people struggling with something, and it's very humbling. Like, it's ridiculously humbling, because it's when people will tell you that I was, I finally was able to see my mother's point of view, right? I finally was able to stand up to an abusive husband and things like that, which you almost at that point like want to just shut that email down because you don't want that, responsibility, and yet you do, and so they are very powerful.
Well, I think. Oh, sorry, Kimberly.
Go ahead, Jenny. Go ahead.
I was going to say that, another hallmark of the great literature, like you look at Austen and this is not new to say, but, she was a woman writing in England during that time period. And yet she had such a revolutionary message that you could make a mistake or you could say no thank you to the 8th richest man in all of England, right? And that was revolutionary time. But what I love is that now it's 2020 and the years prior, but that someone like Sonali, who grew up in a very different place from where Jane Austen grew up and lived, has now taken that same message and made it applicable again to an even wider audience of people who maybe have very little in common with someone like Jane Austen. But yet that message is resonating so much that you can just translate it over. And that's really exciting to see, is how that can continue to spin and inspire even more people.
I will confess, I am not a Jane Austen fan.
I'm not either.
But, like, not at all.
Oh nope.
And I know it's in my book group. It's sacrilegious when I say that, yes. But
we have to talk after this, Kimberly.
But my point, Sonali, is I loved your book.
Right.
So I found your book to be the story I wanted. And I think that idea that you're talking about what do you learn from these books? What do you carry forward into your life from the story that you spend time with? I think that's so important. And maybe I couldn't hear Jane Austen's message because of when I read the book at the time. The timing really matters. And then when I read your book, it resonated differently. So I think that's, I don't know, the beauty of storytelling, right? That you're going to reach different people at different times in different ways. And we have to keep reading and buying books and opening our eyes.
Yeah, yes. And I mean, you're reading someone from the 1800s is, is a matter of voice, language, so many things, right? And when you read it, it's almost like baffling how, to someone growing up in the 1980s, in Mumbai, in Bombay, how that spoke to me. It's just really weird.
We're grateful that it did.
Indeed.
Now, one of the things that we find during this time of COVID, we find that a lot of people are having a very difficult time to read. So obviously we want them to check out your book, Sonali. But what's something else that the two of you have read during this time that has brought you solace or laughter or taught you something that you want people to check out?
Well, I would recommend, I just read the new Frederick Bachman. It's called Anxious People. He wrote A Man Called Ove, and several others. He has also been the Andersons. And I didn't know what to expect in it, but like it opens with like a character who is 39 years old, who's exactly as old as I am, and like how it's not really a story about them. And there's so much that it just encompassed, it had every emotion. Anxious People is called, and it talks about anxiety and how our journeys and the path we take to get to certain places. And it is just beautiful. You will see things in there that made me chuckle out loud, that made me recognize things in myself and others, that by the end there were tears running down my face. It's just a beautiful read. I wouldn't categorize it as anything specific. It's not like escapism. It is not, a book about the plague. It's just a really well done fiction.
Excellent. Sonali, anything you've been reading lately?
So initially when COVID happened, it was hard for me to read. And I think some of my reading, was kind of almost forced because I was reading for blurbs or to help a friend. And so it was hard. But there was one book which actually gave me back almost my joy, where I kind of stopped trying. I was like, what is it? The Matrix, where I stopped trying to read and read. and it was and Jenny's heard me rave about this book. It's called Boyfriend Boyfriend
Boyfriend
Material.
material, right.
by
Mhm.
Boyfriend
Alexis
Material.
Hall.
Okay.
Yes, by Alexis Hall. And what it is the perfect romantic comedy, and it is the perfect British romantic comedy. Again, something that I grew up with. I mean, this book, it's the story of this complete fuck up. Am I allowed to say that?
Yes.
who is the
Sure.
who's the completely messed up son of a fallen rock star, in London, and he's been the paparazzi darling for all the wrong reasons. He's always on the news for messing up and for throwing up outside some bar. So he's a mess, and he's going to lose his job. Because he's such a mess. And so, the way that they think he can save it is if he finds a boyfriend who is, who's upstanding and perfect. And so he finds a human rights lawyer who is, and it is just so right from the beginning, they're in this fake relationship. But the entire book, the fake relationship is in quotes, because of course they're like, really hot for each other, but they hate each other. It's this mess, and the main character is just such a mess, but is so crazy endearing. And then there's this group of friends and the crazy mother who I literally was like hyena guffawing, because it was just so insanely endearing and funny. I loved it. So it kind of just yanked me right out of my COVID dumps. It was fabulous. I think another romance that I read that I just think is one of the most beautifully written romances, and has everything that I love about the genre in it, is Boyfriend Material is Alexis Hall.
Yep.
But this one is Love Lettering, and it's by
I
knew
read
you were
that.
going to say that
Kate
one. Yeah.
Claiborne. Isn't it gorgeous?
I've read that. Wow,
Yeah.
I do read more romance novels than I realized. Yeah.
It's just such
It's actually very good.
writing. It's lovely.
It is really good.
And Kate is great, and so I loved that. I read and I know you, I'm going to keep going on. This is the last one I'll talk about. I also read The Nest, which is, have you read The Nest, which I think was a big deal a few years ago.
Yes, I've read that.
Yep. Really and someone told me, because I was writing, a family, they said you're gonna love this, because it's like the Rajes, but really dysfunctional, and so not like the Rajes. And so I read The Nest, and it was I think it's really good writing. Technically, it had some things in it which were kind of weird for me, because it's almost omniscient, and it's all these multiple POVs. So there was craft stuff in it, but I thought it was just excellent storytelling, just in terms of the amount of pieces that she works with and then brings them all together somehow. So it was this great exercise in character, and just just basically taking really dysfunctional characters and redeeming them, almost all of them, except the one that you thought was going to be redeemed and not redeeming him. It's just really great storytelling. I really enjoyed it.
So one of the things, thank you for those recommendations. We'll put them as links below the broadcast, so people who are interested in finding out those books can do so. So one thing, Ginny, you mentioned earlier is that in this COVID environment, obviously Andersons can't pull together these wonderful in-person events that Sonali has told us every single writer has been to. And so I'm wondering, you've moved to online events. If I want to learn more about them, I can go to your website and sign up. Do you have a newsletter?
We don't do newsletter. I think right now, because things are changing so quickly, social media is the place to go, but our website does have all the current things listed. If you'd like a couple of upcoming things, I can tell you about very quickly. I think Robin Carr, we're part of a group event to promote her next book, Return to Virgin River, which is going to be really great. We're doing so many different kind of things. We have V.E. Schwab next month, which is going to be fantastic. She is beloved. We are part of a group event for Pete Buttigieg on Sunday, actually, coming up. His new book, Trust, is coming out. And then we're doing something with Cory Doctorow next month, which is going to be really interesting as well. We also have I will say, a well-timed book on making your own cocktails at home for the week after the election in November from one of the editors at Milk Street. So that's going to be super fun too.
We might need that now.
I know. I was like, can we please do it earlier? But they're not publishing it until then. So, it is what it is. But
we needed it last night.
Yes, we did. But we'll have many, many choices for whatever we're feeling the week after the election.
Okay.
So that for sure.
So andersonsbookshop.com.
Yes, ma'am.
And then you're on social media. You're at Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can find the bookstore in all of these places, and you can learn more about their upcoming events.
Yes.
Now, Sonali, before we went live, you told us some very exciting news. Today is a very big day for you, so we're especially honored that you're here. I was kind of flabbergasted that you're still here today, considering what today is. Can you tell our audience what's going on in your world today?
So today is my deadline day. Today is the day that my 7th book is due.
Yeah.
The 3rd book in this series. And I think I can share the name. It is my favorite title ever. And it's going to be called Incense and Sensibility.
Love it.
That's so
fantastic.
And I think what's lovely about this is that I had come up with this series back in 2013 when my son was in middle school, and we were in the car driving to one of his math classes or something. And I kind of told him what the stories are about and asked him to title them, like just for fun. He's a very clever little boy. And so he came up with titles for all of them. And the first 2 were really like out there. And so they didn't stick, but because one of the protagonists is a yoga instructor, an incense maker, a stress relief coach, one of those people. And he comes up with Incense and Sensibility. And I was like, wow. So
does he get royalties?
He's expecting royalties.
Yeah.
Smart kid. Now. So I'm so proud of that title. I just saw the cover. I love it. But the book is due tonight. And this is all like, because I've been writing a yoga instructor, this is fake calm. No, this is hers is not fake calm. Mine is. So I'm kind of freaking out on the inside. So yeah, my revisions are due tonight. It's right now a 28 chapter book. I'm on chapter 22.
You can do it. We know you can.
We believe in you.
We do.
I might be able to do it.
Sonali, does it have a pub date yet?
Yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
I think it's going to, I don't have an exact pub date. I'm told it will be June-ish,
Usually
July.
your end of May.
June 2021.
Yeah, 2021. And
if it's safe, we'll have the launch here too again.
I'm hoping,
we can be in person.
I know. I'm really hoping, even if it's with even if it's with masks and things like that. I really need to do the samosas and mimosas at Anderson's, which is what we've always done.
We need it too.
Yeah, we all need some samosas and mimosas. So Nelly, we're getting some audience questions for you. And so the audience member wants to know what the 4th Jane Austen homage book will be. So the first one was Pride and Prejudice. The second one was Persuasion. This is Sense and Sensibility. And the 4th one is
Emma. It's Emma. And anytime I'm on, so that's going to be a hard one to title, because we've been able to, roll the titles with these, but Emma is a person's name. And and I'm kind of stressing out already about what's going to happen, with that title. So of course, if anybody in the audience has ideas,
well, you need to ask your son, I guess, right?
I know.
So that one was hard. My son, the person, the protagonist has a name that starts with an E, and so we were just going to go with the name, but it doesn't really, The other day he says, just change her name to Hema, which would be Emma, and I'm like, too late. That is book 4, so I can't change anyone's name. So.
Oh, clever.
It's going to be, but yes, it's Emma.
we're coming to the end of our time. So before we go, and I don't want to go, this is actually such a pleasure to talk with both of you. But I wanted to ask, Sonali, is there anything that you want to make sure our audience is aware of about Anderson's? Like something we haven't touched upon that you think is so important for our audience to keep in mind?
So like I said, right, I mean, I think that it is, it's the mecca, it's the heaven of of author events for sure. So if you're ever in the area, I would look up their website and see, when our world kind of comes back to normal a little bit, look up their website and maybe make that part of your trip to the area, because you want some author you love, there's a chance that they will be doing an event. But I think until that happens, for sure, I mean, if you can order my books, they always have signed books from me, but they have signed books from, I have I think signed books from Michelle Obama. Is that one signed? Because you had her.
We did not have Michelle, and I'm very bitter.
You did have Michelle.
We did not have Michelle.
Oh,
but there were special signed editions of her books that we did have copies of. So you must have snagged one of those. Yeah.
So, that's like such a bummer. But
tell me about it.
It's not too late. It's not too late. I'm hoping she'll write another book and then come back. But they have a bunch of signed books, and I just feel like it's such an important thing to keep them in business.
Mm-hmm.
Just that store is such a jewel of our community. So go on their website today and order stuff. It's that's the only way, really. I think we could do all sorts of stuff, but our only way is to actually buy things from the indies at this point, if they're important to us. So absolutely, those two things. Look up their events page if you're in the Chicago area, and order
also,
something from them.
It's not too soon to start thinking about holiday gift giving.
No, October is the new December. That's
what is the new December?
October.
October is
the new December. Yes, thanks to some unfortunate supply chain issues that neither authors nor bookstores have control over. There may be some limitations on certain things, and some of the presses, which there are only a couple in the US, are having. There's a couple of big books that you may have heard of. They're going to be taking up a lot of printing time. So so come on in. We're actually doing this really cool buy two, get one free sale starting tomorrow for a lot of really cool gift products. And we'll have our big member sale coming up at the end of October as well. So awesome. We have many, many recommendations for you for holiday items. I know it feels crazy to think about, but
it'll be here before we know it. Yeah,
I know. Yep.
So Ginny and Sonali, thank you so much for spending time with Authors Love Bookstores today.
Thank you. Thank you for what you do to promote authors and bookstores.
It's really our pleasure. Viewers, check out Anderson's Bookshop, andersonsbookshop.com. Find out about upcoming events, place an order. Follow Sonali on all the internets, on social media. My kids will laugh about that one. On social media, she's also at sonalidev.com. You can find out more on the exact publication date of the new book, and definitely what her next speaking engagements and other events are coming up. And of course, join us back here next Wednesday for another editions of Authors Love Bookstores. Until then, keep reading and be well. Thank you.
Thank you.